The episode begins with Amma talking to Ruhi and Ruhi says she is missing Raman and says she is being strict to him as she wants him get some sense. Amma says Ishita might be proud of you. Mrs. Bhalla makes all the dishes and Niddhi asks her to leave. Niddhi wears the apron and Raman comes and asks did she do all this? Niddhi says yes and calls her a multi-talented one. Amma asks Ms. Bhalla to drink wine and spoil the party. Mrs. Bhalla says idea is great. The man describes and the sketch is done and he takes permission and leaves. Abhishek asks her sketch and ink falls on it and Abhishek asks him to make another and the artist says man has left. Abhishek sees the half sketch and comes to know it was Raman. He wonders why Raman didn't say anything and thinks about his behavior. Niddhi attends her friends in the party and Mrs. Bhalla comes drinking and hugs her friends. Niddhi says Mrs. Bhalla jokes a lot and introduces Nisha to Mrs. Bhalla. Mrs. Bhalla says to Nisha that her husband has left her as she had an affair. The guests start arguing and Raman comes and sees the guests leaving. Niddhi comes and hugs him. She says your mum has ruined the party and Raman scolds Mrs. Bhalla. He tells after all she had a lot of hard work and Simi stops him and says it was Mrs. Bhalla who cooked the food. Raman taunts her and says he will manage Niddhi no matter what all you say and takes her inside. Mrs. Bhalla says he has changed dramatically and Simi takes Mrs. Bhalla inside and Amma asks her not to worry. Ruhi starts thinking about how did Raman forget Ishita? Ashik talks to Rayachand and Rayachand asks him how is he planning to impress his daughter and Ashik says he is giving her a diamond necklace and Rayachand asks him to think twice and have a drink. Abhishek talks to Romi and Romi explains what all happened that day. He says Raman has changed significantly and is always busy with Niddhi and she even stays with him. Everyone miss Ishita, kids cry and we feel empty. Romi cries saying she definitely would not have committed suicide. Abhishek asks him to leave and says so it was Raman who was with Ishita that day on the cliff and asks the inspector to call Govind. Shagun asks Manoj what is this and asks does your mum not trust her? She says she trusts her and says my lawyer insisted this and Shagun sees Niddhi and Shagun says I knew you would be behind this. Niddhi says she has made some conditions too and says Shagun must leave the kids twice a year and says the third child will go to Raman she will not bear any responsibility and Shagun gets shocked.